Good morning. Thank you for coming to the RIC event. As we go through the presentation today, please consider joining our team. A lot of people kind of get overwhelmed with like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that team. You don't. So we have learned a lot together and have really delved into this kind of information. So on our team, we're learning, we're advocating, we're educating, and we're loving. So a lot of people have asked the question over and over again, what is RIC? It's not a very good name to describe what we're doing here, so I thought I'd touch on that quick. It's called Reconciling in Christ, and so this is a process of intentionally creating a safe place for LGBTQIA+ to join us in worship and fellowship by making a commitment to welcome them, include them, and celebrate their LGBTQIA person. And so as we go through this RIC process today, we will learn about this community of people and who these people have been oppressed, they've been marginalized, and we want to shift the focus from not oppression and marginalization, but to loving. So I have a Bible verse some Bible verses to share with you. It's from 1 John 3:16 through 24. This is how we know what love is. Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our siblings. If anyone has material possessions and sees a sibling in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. This is how we know that we belong to the truth and how we set our hearts at rest in his presence. If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. Dear friends, if your hearts do not condemn us, we have confidence before God and receive from him anything we ask, because we keep his commands and do what pleases him, period. And this is his command, to believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and to love one another as he has commanded us. The one who keeps God's commands lives in him, and he in them. And this is how we know that he lives in us. We know it by the Spirit he gave us. So today, as we learn about SOGIE, which is up here, we are going to learn about sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. So we're going to watch a short video, and Pastor's going to go ahead and start it for us right now.
There are 4 elements of identity that you will need to know: sex assigned at birth, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. First is sex assigned at birth, which is based on physical anatomy. This is often assigned before or immediately after birth by looking at the baby's anatomy. The most typical sex assigned at birth is either female or male, but there are other variations of sex worth noting. Variation in sex characteristics can be variations among hormones, chromosomes, or anatomy. The term intersex is used as an umbrella term for those born with varying sex characteristics. About 1 in every 100 people are born intersex. That's more common than most people think. So contrary to popular belief, there are in fact more sexes than just male or female. The next important term to know is gender identity. Gender identity is a person's internal sense of their own gender. All people have a gender identity, though not many people think about it. Gender identity is how you feel about your gender and your role in your culture's gendered practices. Gendered practices vary from culture to culture, so there isn't only one way to define being a girl, woman, boy, man, or any other gender. Gender identity forms very early in childhood, with some signs pointing to as early as 2 years old. When young children start to say, "I'm a boy" or "I am a girl," they are describing how they feel about their own gender. I would like to explain a few key terms related to gender identity. The word cisgender describes a person whose gender identity and sex assigned at birth match. The word transgender describes a person whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth. The term transgender is also an umbrella term for gender identities like gender fluid, non-binary, and agender. For more information on these terms, click the glossary link in the description. The next term you will want to know is gender expression. Gender expression describes how people express their gender externally. This could be through clothing, hobbies, mannerisms, or hairstyles. Gender expression and the expectations around expression have changed over time, and they may change day to day depending on how a person feels. Sometimes, one might dress more masculine one day and then decide to dress more feminine the next day. It's important to note that gender expression does not tell us how someone identifies their gender, and it is best not to assume who someone is based on their style of clothing. It's best to ask the person how they identify. Lastly, we will talk about sexual orientation. Sexual orientation describes feelings of attraction. Think back to when you had your last crush. What were the feelings you had? Maybe you felt excited when you saw the person you liked. Maybe you got nervous or shy around them. Or maybe your heart raced and you had attraction. Think back to when you had your last crush. What were the feelings you had? Maybe butterflies. These are all feelings of attraction. Attraction can mean different things to different people. But one thing to note is that these feelings are not a choice or something someone can control. We cannot tell our heart to slow down or our butterflies to go away. Sexual orientation can start to form around early childhood. Think back to when you had your very first crush. This is when your sexual orientation started to develop. Common terms you hear associated with sexual orientation are lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, queer, and straight. Lesbian describes a girl or woman who is primarily attracted to other girls or women. Gay describes boys or men who are primarily attracted to other boys or men. But this term is also used by anyone who is attracted to the same gender. Bisexual refers to people who are attracted to their own gender as well as other genders. Pansexual refers to someone who is attracted to people regardless of gender. Asexual is used to describe someone who may not feel sexual attraction to any gender. This does not mean that the person doesn't want to be in relationships. It just means that the element of sexual attraction is absent. You might have also heard the term queer. Queer is used as an umbrella term that can only be defined by the individual using it. The term continues to be hurtful to some people, especially older populations who experience this term as a slur. However, some people use this term as a source of pride and a symbol of determination. It's always best to use the term only if the person self-identifies as queer, and if the person gives you permission to refer to them in that way. Lastly, some people identify as straight, which means they are attracted to people of the opposite gender. Now that you have some basic terminology under your belt, you're ready to jump into more specific content to get to know this population's experiences better, and to gain skills on how to serve them best.
We'd have Bryn around, but I'll take over. So that kind of gave us a good overview of what we're talking about with the sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. I'll get closer. Okay. So that's kind of the gist of this whole presentation in a nice little compact video. So most of us are familiar with the binary male and female. Most of us probably identify along that binary of male and female, but there are many people that don't fit into those categories. We've learned that it's kind of more of a spectrum. There are people that kind of fall sometimes on that binary and sometimes off the binary. They may fall in this agender where they don't identify with any gender. They may identify as non-binary. They may identify as a little bit of masculine agender, female agender. They may be a little fluid, where they may sometimes feel more masculine, sometimes more feminine. Or they may feel a little bit of everything. So the big thing is to make sure that we understand that don't assume somebody's gender until they've identified as how they want to be identified. This kind of will go into our pronouns that we're going to talk about next. I just wanted to mention that gender expression doesn't necessarily identify gender identity. Somebody may express themselves as more masculine one day, but they still identify as she, her pronouns. Or they may dress more feminine and still identify with masculine pronouns. So don't assume their gender identity based on how they present themselves. Okay.
Okay, so this next video is about pronouns and the importance of them. The speakers do have an accent, so we did include the subtitles. Can you guys see okay? We can turn the lights off up front too if that's helpful. Yeah, can we hit the lights, Pastor? And we're gonna hit play. Thank you.
Pronouns are basically words used to refer to a person rather than their name.
They, she, and he are all examples of common pronouns.
He and she are gendered pronouns.
She's typically used by people who identify as female, and he's typically used by people who identify as male.
However, he or she pronouns are sometimes used by people who don't identify as strictly male or female.
Some people prefer gender-neutral pronouns.
Gender-neutral pronouns are generally used by people who identify as genderqueer or non-binary.
A few common gender-neutral pronouns are they, ze, and a, but there are a whole array of gender-neutral pronouns.
People think long and hard about the pronouns they'd like to use and why.
If you use the wrong pronoun for someone, that's what's called misgendering.
When a person has new pronouns, it can take a bit of getting used to, but it's really important to use the right ones.
A person's identity is very important, and it's super important to respect that.
So when people use the wrong pronoun to me, I find that I've gone through all this effort to kind of come out and be myself, and it's kind of just thrown back in my face. Coming out for me was mainly awkward with a lot of people that used to know me. People didn't understand. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding. When people get my pronouns right, it makes me feel like I'm, like being myself, and people are responding to that and are just like respecting me as a person.
When people get my pronouns right, I feel respected by them and I end up feeling a lot more comfortable around them.
Sometimes if you identify someone with a different pronoun that they don't identify as, you can potentially actually upset them, and I don't think you should be upsetting someone in this process, and that's why I think it's very important to know what someone identified themselves as and respect it.
It's not about like you're a terrible person if you mess up, or you're a terrible person if you take time to adjust. You're totally not. But it's more about making that extra effort for someone that you do care about, or just kind of being a bit considerate that everyone has different needs, and it's just a really cool thing to do for a person. And I think it's easy to not quite get that, or just see it as, there's a person who's mad at you, and outwardly they might be a little bit upset, but inwardly what they're feeling that's motivating that reaction is so much more an understanding that they're not hating on you, it's just that they really are probably a bit fed up and a bit hurt.
It's not always easy to come out and tell people that you're trans.
Never assume someone's pronouns, just ask if you're not sure. Using the correct pronouns is a pretty big deal, and it's a really awesome thing to do.
Genitals don't equal gender.
This is probably the biggest mistake people make. It's a pretty easy assumption to make, but genitals and body don't actually reflect anything about a person's gender at all.
Above all else, don't try and argue with this person, whether you personally agree or not. A person who's asking you to use those pronouns likely has put a lot of thought into it and trusts you.
Basically, what's more important? Someone's anatomy or who they really are and their happiness?
Sometimes, however, you will slip up and use the wrong pronouns. It's not good, but it does happen.
Getting used to someone's new pronoun can take time.
And you may feel pretty awkward or even guilty when you make a mistake.
Some may sound pretty strange at first, and changing the words you use in general can be harder than expected.
If you do slip up accidentally, it's important to not lash out at the person or blame them.
You might not pick it up instantly, and it's important to try hard on this. But if you do slip up, don't snap on it.
Just keep trying your best and you'll get the hang of it with time.
Don't freak out, just make a quick apology, correct yourself, and keep going with the conversation.
Making a big deal out of it, it's probably gonna make them feel bad and make the situation very uncomfortable for both of you.
If you hear someone deliberately or even accidentally using the wrong pronouns for a person, don't hesitate to pull them up on it and politely correct them.
Hopefully that helps to explain pronouns a little bit better and lets you know how much it can mean to a person. And it's super important to get them right as much as possible.
Something as small as a tiny word like that could have a huge impact on a gender diverse person.
Both how they feel at the moment and how they feel in the long term.
Having good, accepting, awesome, and loving people around you can really be life-changing.
Okay, so these little words can make a big difference in somebody's life. And so let me give you a life example for myself. My name's Jenny Conway. I go by she, her. In school, I got in trouble because I didn't respond to my name my name Jennifer, because that's not my name. My parents gave me the name Jenny, and I thought they were talking about other people in their classrooms. I also have a mother named Sherry, and she was given the name Cheryl, and she did not like that name. Everybody in our congregation who knows her as a Sherry, and so like when people would call her Cheryl, that was something that she didn't like. Now it's not quite the pronoun thing. The pronoun thing is a little tricky because when we know somebody, we see them, like as you guys had seen Bryn grow up in the congregation, it's easy to slip into that pattern. Bryn goes by they, them at this time. So I thought we'd give a little practice with some of these. So our ones on the top are ones we're used to. She, her, hers, he, him, his. And so I have some examples for some of these gender neutral. In the high school or in the middle school, I go and help with suicide prevention and identification. And when we interview kids because they're showing signs of suicide, we just go by they, them, because they're kind of raw at the time, and it's better to just kind of make a general gender neutral type of thing so that we don't have to get into that. So here's one for you, because you guys probably have done some of these already, so they're pretty easy. Okay, I talked to a customer service rep, and they helped me fix the problem. Do you know their gender? No, but gender neutral is okay. So it's just kind of flipping that when you see the person and then using the gender neutral is another way. How about this one? I can go with, how about Z, her, hers. It looks like someone left her, you know what, I'm going to go with Zer because it might sound like she, her. So it looks like someone left Zer jacket on the chair. Okay. How about this one? I don't know who's in charge, but we should find them. We do that a lot, right? So some of these are really common. We've done it with our language, but then now we're being introduced to some others. How about this one? It looks like the person we're supposed to meet. Oh, it looks like that's the person we're supposed to meet. Look, they're waving at us. Okay, so if you know that they identify as Z, them, zer, that would be the way that we would do that. Okay, next.
So, we've kind of gone over the gender identity and gender expression and pronouns. So we're going to move over to the sexual orientation, which is the other side of the LGBTQIA+ community. So, some of you may be familiar with the Kinsey scale. It came out in the 1950s by Dr. Alfred Kinsey. He kind of realized that people don't necessarily fall in the straight or gay, the heterosexual or the homosexual categories. that there's kind of a little bit of diversity. Some people may fall closer to one side or the other, or they may be right in the middle with a bisexual, pansexual expression. We've learned as time has evolved and we've become more educated on the whole community that there is a different part of this. So now it's more of a spectrum rather than a scale. So we have this allosexual and asexual. Allosexual just means others, so you're attracted to others. Or asexual just means you have no sexual, without sexual attraction to others. So people may fall anywhere between like the top corner, bottom corner, anywhere on the spectrum. They may be straight and have sexual attraction to people. They may be straight and have no sexual attraction to people. They may be gay or bisexual, have attraction or no attraction. It all kind of depends as we go through. Like, you may find people anywhere along that spectrum. There's also a romantic side of it, but we'll go just with the sexual orientation part of it first. We're gonna go over examples next. That's you.
The first flag is lesbian, which generally refers to a woman who has attraction towards other women. So this is the gay flag, someone who is attracted to people of their own sex or gender, not necessarily exclusively, especially referring to men. Bisexual. This is someone who is attracted to more than one gender. Yep. Pansexual. A person who is attracted to people regardless of their gender. Transgender. Someone whose assigned gender or sex does not match their gender identity. Non-binary, someone who is neither male nor female, but somewhere in between. I don't know if we have this one. Okay, gender fluid? Okay, this is gender fluid, a person whose gender identity and expression does not stay fixed. This one is intersex, which is someone whose sex characteristics, their chromosomes and or genitalia, do not fit the boy or girl box. Many are surgically altered to fit in. And asexual, someone who does not feel sexual attraction towards anyone.
Don't go to the next slide. Oh, I was just going to mention, so we kind of mixed the sexual orientation and the gender expression, and we kind of threw intersex in there as well. Sorry, I'll switch spots with you. So we kind of mixed it up a little bit. We'll get there.
What's the difference between?
No, go ahead. I guess we'll go there.
Wait, I was not recording for. Hold on.
It's all good.